Welcome to Conversations, y'all. We're here because of you, and you. You've heard from Attorney General Tish James. You heard from David Mann, Richard Smallwood. You heard from Attorney Ben Crump when the whole crisis was going down over the summer involving George Floyd. And you said, we just got little glimpses for them on the Prayze party, but we wanted to have more conversations. So tonight we bring you the first show of Conversations. And tonight we're talking about one of the hottest topics in the nation, a topic that is key and near and dear to my heart: vaccination. The question is, inject or reject? And we wanted to make sure that we just didn't bring you everyone has these general views and philosophies, but we want to bring you, as the slogan for the show is, we want to bring the truth to the table. So tonight we brought some of the world's leading experts, physicians from across the country. We go from the East Coast, we go from the South, we go to the Midwest to bring you the facts about the vaccination. I know there's a lot of concern about putting something in your arm that you just don't know what's going to happen. And that's all true. But we want to make sure that the myths and the theories and all of these things become clear tonight on Conversations. And just to remember why we got here and how we got here, we're gonna play something, not right now, but I just want to say I want to thank you for the folks from One God Network. Thanks to the folks from 95.1 Omni-Channel Theater. They're so interested in the conversations tonight that they're going to air this particular show on One Network and air it to Omni-Channel Theater to reach thousands and thousands of folks across the world. So we're going to say thank you to those organizations for being considerate and thinking of Conversations for your network and your broadcast. We're excited about that. But now back to what I was saying. We want to remind you about how we got to the predicament that we're in right now. So if you can roll the tape. You saw the lines, you saw those charts and those graphs. As you'll hear, unfortunately, the numbers are rising, and it's our dynamic guests that are going to bring the truth to the table. We're also going to have it kicked off by our dear special host and part of Conversations month to month. It's going to be every first Monday, and we're going to have special guest hosts come in and navigate with our guests that brace us here in the studio. And tonight, I had my pleasure to introduce a dear friend. Many of you know her. She is known as a professor over there in Pepperdine on the West Coast, has the luxury of going out and seeing the Malibu sunset every day. She's also known as a judge. She's been a judge as well. She's a preacher. She's been doing these services today throughout Good Friday. And also, I must say, happy Good Friday. Happy Easter weekend, happy Resurrection weekend for those. And it's a special weekend of time. And we're just glad that she was able to take some time out of her services to be up here in the house. Yes. How are you, Tiffany Williams? And let me just add to the resume: author, motivational speaker. And let me also put a note on, it's not Miss New Jersey, but first runner-up should have been Miss New Jersey, but she was robbed. But Miss New Jersey, Tiffany Williams. How you doing tonight, there, Reverend Dr. Tiffany Williams?
Well, first of all, Rob, I'm going to have to take you everywhere that I go to have to give me that introduction. So you're spoiling me, but I'm doing well. And thank you for having this truthful conversation tonight and allowing me to be a part of it.
Oh, we're excited. And let me tell you, Reverend Williams, we have a number of special guests that we have the pleasure of introducing that you're going to navigate here. I'm going to kind of sit back a little bit and just listen and learn. But our first guest is a doctor out of Yale, the School of Medicine. She is the medical director for the for psychiatry out there, Tishiana Arma. And Dr. Arma is not only their medical director, but she's also the vice president of behavioral health for Yale University School of Medicine. And just footnote, one of the best medical schools in the world. And we're grateful to have one of our experts here. And Dr. Arma is very passionate about this issue. She was so passionate that she made a commercial, and let's share this with you.
You're worried about the COVID-19 vaccine. I was too, and I'm a doctor. I avoided it until I thought about my patients who were avoiding it as well. As a scientist, I dug into the facts and got informed. One thing became clear: the vaccine could save lives, so I got it. And then I started giving the vaccine so that people who look like me would know that it was safe, because it is, and it can save your life.
So with no further ado, Dr. Arma, please come up into the stage. How are you, Dr. Arma?
Hello, how are you? Thank you so much for having me.
Well, it's great to have you, but you're just one of our many special pieces here. Our second guest, one of our medical experts, comes from, we're going to go from the East Coast from the Yale in Connecticut down to the South in Tennessee, and it's going to be Dr. LaTanya Washington. Dr. Washington is what you call a double boarded. You know, this is the overachievers. It's just not good enough to be board certified in internal medicine, but she's also board certified in pediatrics. And so we have some questions about the kids tonight. So Dr. Washington, I'm excited that you're going to be with us. But Dr. Washington also is on the Memphis and Shelby County COVID-19 task force. Dr. Washington also, because of her passion, created a little commercial that we're going to share with you.
I'm Dr. LaTanya Washington, physician advisor at St. Francis Hospital, Memphis. As physicians, we know that what we do now will affect the future for us all. Memphis and Shelby County, get vaccinated. It's our best shot.
Dr. Washington said, shot. Get your shot. Come on out, Dr. Washington. What's going on, girl? How are you?
Hi, good evening. Thanks for having me.
Oh, listen, it is a pleasure. It is a pleasure. And last but not least, we have our dear Dr. Stephen Gay. Dr. Gay is the Dean of Admissions. I did not stutter. He's the Dean of Admissions at the University of Michigan School of Medicine, or actually it's to say medical school. Everyone has a different way of saying things. So I'm going to make sure I get it right. Dr. Washington is a pulmonologist. Dr. Washington is also on the FDA advisory committee for pulmonary and allergy medicine. So Dr. Washington, please bring him on to the stage.
Thank you very much. Steve Gay here. It's an honor and privilege, Rob. I greatly appreciate this.
Listen, the privilege is all ours. And I'm going to kickstart things, and then I'm going to leave it up to our good Reverend Professor Judge Tiffany Williams to do the rest. But I just, because part of it is I'm just a little crazy and very passionate. I have family members who are in the highest category of concern for COVID, but they have a fear of taking the vaccine. I have friends, colleagues that have this fear of taking the vaccine. And as far as the Black and Latino community, I've read the articles. In fact, there was an article not too long ago out of the New York Times that said, I don't want to be a guinea pig for white people. So I want to know from you folks, what sense of security can you give people as to the vaccine because they are scared to death?
Well, if I'm able to sort of start, I'd say, the first thing I ask people is, are you scared to death of dying from COVID, right? Because there's this concern about the vaccine, and that I get that, right? But there should be that equal amount of concern about getting COVID, and even more so, right? Because we actually have the data. We have all the evidence that it's killing us disproportionately, especially as Black people. So I always steer to that first, and then get back to, okay, well, let's talk about it. Let's talk about what actually has happened with the vaccine, and has it been helpful, right? So the main thing, the most important thing is that we don't keep dying from this, right? And what we've seen is that no matter what you talk about of effectiveness of any of the different vaccines, what it is effective at is keeping us out of the hospital and keeping us from dying from COVID complications.
Absolutely. I agree with Dr. Arma. I will say that, initially, I believe we all were somewhat skeptical with how quickly this vaccine came to fruition. But, we have about 530,000 reasons why we should be more afraid of COVID-19 than we should be of this vaccine. There have been no deaths that have been directly correlated to receiving the vaccine. And for me, I was more afraid of dying from COVID than I was about getting the vaccine. So I rolled my sleeve up. I've talked to my family members. Many of them have been vaccinated as well. I made sure my mother was vaccinated. So that was what was really important to me. And then also just thinking about all of the healthcare providers, essentially all of us have been vaccinated fully for probably on the order of a couple of months. I know I finished my vaccine series in early January, and we are all doing fine. There have been, minimal side effects other than immediately after getting the vaccine, feeling somewhat sluggish for a day or two, but otherwise we bounced back. And so I will say, there is reason for concern. However, look at the evidence that has been shown since we've gotten vaccinated and that we're doing well. And so that should be encouragement for you.
My colleagues have spoken to this so eloquently. It is very clear that this pandemic is hitting our population, hitting our family and loved ones at much greater rates than anyone else in the country. We have seen the data that shows the safety through the millions and millions of people that have already received the vaccine. As Dr. Washington said, we as folks who deliver healthcare stepped up immediately to get it because our feeling is we have trained and worked to care for those around us, that we feel that we should be a part of this action and part of this response. And without doing so, by getting sick, we are unable to do that. It stretches even further toward our families. We want to protect our loved ones. We want to care for our loved ones. We want to be there when they need us. And the best way we can do that is to get vaccinated, to stay safe, to take the precautions we have to take so we can be there, support others, care for others, and protect others.
Very well said, Dr. Gay. And I will say that I also decided to get the vaccine. I get my second shot tomorrow afternoon. As a matter of fact, I have not had any adverse effect at all, thank God. And, you all have already started to debunk some of the myths in our community, which I think is important. And truth and knowledge is power, so that we can make informed decisions and hopefully have an impact on those disparate numbers of people of color who have not yet taken the vaccine. But one important issue that I wanted to ask all of you to speak to is about the efficacy of the vaccine itself. So some concern about the vaccine, and it's a concern I had initially. I am generally, I'm an educated woman, right? But I have some distrust of the pharmaceutical industry. And we have had incidents in the past where we know that people of color have been guinea pigs. So what are the facts about how this vaccine could be created in such a short amount of time and still be safe? Is it that we really have seen the confluence of, all of this just intellectual kind of thought and medical advancement and technology to come together so quickly? Or should we be concerned? Do you want to start, Dr. Gay, and then we have Dr.
Certainly.
Washington and Dr. Arma?
Certainly. This has been the first global pandemic of its type in 100 years. It has affected every socioeconomic group, every racial and ethnic group. It is truly a worldwide issue. Because of this, and because of the rapidity of its spread and how it was so quickly causing a significant amount of deaths, this was the greatest mobilization of medical research and healthcare in the history of our civilization. It had to be. It was the only way we were going to be able to control this and slow it. Every drug company put aside all of their other research to try to concentrate on finding a solution to this that could preserve our society and protect our individuals in it. It is because of this. It's because of the unbelievable amount of resources from every university, from every pharmaceutical group, that we're all marshaled together to try to find a solution, that a solution came to fruition so rapidly. We've seen this type of action happen before when we mobilized in World War II to protect the world. It is the same type of action. When everyone acts together, extraordinary things can happen. And we were blessed to be able to find an answer in such a short period of time. The vaccine, all of the vaccines are between 85 and 90% effective in terms of assisting us in fighting this disease and this pandemic. And because of this, right now, it is our best weapon to try to return our society to some semblance of normal.
I absolutely agree. I will say that, just seeing everyone come together to help create this vaccine really is something that I could have never imagined, but I'm certainly glad that it has happened. When we talk about other vaccines that have been developed, vaccination is usually one of those things that doesn't generate a lot of revenue for pharmaceutical companies. Thus, that tends to kind of be on the back burner. They don't usually have a lot of funding. And so again, as Dr. Gay mentioned, all of the funding was really funneled towards creating a COVID vaccine. And so that's why we've been able to come to this place currently where were able to have a vaccine that was developed in less than 1 year's time. It really was an urgency. I've heard other people talk about things like, well, why haven't they found a cure for AIDS or a cure for cancer? The truth is that AIDS hasn't killed 500,000 Americans in 1 year's time. And so that's why we're here. That's why, this COVID vaccine had to be created.
And obviously agree with everything that's been said. And two other points that I would just make is, one, it's not as though this came out of thin air. So there was work on, for instance, especially people talked about the messenger RNA. That work was being done in other work, right? So cancer research and looking at things even like Ebola, right? So there was work already being done, and then the cutting of red tape, the cutting of bureaucracy, and saying, okay, we really need to mobilize and do this for the governments as well. So in addition to the companies, governments also saying, okay, look, we're going to get behind you, we want to help. All of those things, I think, pulled together to make sure that this could happen this quickly. So it actually is not, it's not within reason. It's just not something that we regularly see, because it's always about competition, as opposed to we all need to get together so that we can beat this.
We have a question from a viewer that's asking, what are the ingredients in the vaccine? Can either of you speak to, what are people actually putting in their body? Because there are a lot of myths about concerns about that as well. Are you actually putting COVID in your body?
Simply put, the vast majority of the vaccines, to try to break it down simply, are synthesized components of the code that tells the cells what's present. So in a virus, you'll have mRNA that codes for what the virus is and how it creates a certain type of response. They've taken synthesized portions of that code so the body recognizes that code as abnormal and works to create an inflammatory response against it. So you're not actually getting COVID. You're getting something that allows the cell to recognize a COVID virus so it can go ahead and create a very aggressive inflammatory response as soon as it sees it to work to destroy the virus, as opposed to allowing the virus to infect the cells.
And then I would also chime in on that, putting on my pediatric hat for a moment. when we talk about additives in vaccines, in the past, we've seen vaccines that use ingredients like thimerosal or mercury or things like that. Also, utilizing egg proteins to be able to facilitate delivery of the vaccine. None of those things were used in the COVID vaccine. This COVID vaccine, all three of the ones that are currently available, are essentially very clean vaccines. They're pretty much the component that will help your body to make the antibody that you need to make, and some additional like sugar, sucrose, and things like that. But it's very clean, and it doesn't have a lot of additives.
I would just add that, one of the reasons why people still will worry about that or think about it is they'll say, well, but I hear about these symptoms that you have after you get the second vaccine or the first vaccine with Johnson & Johnson. And just sort of this reminder that is not saying that you got COVID. It is actually your body responding to learning what this thing is that we have to respond to later on. So it's building up that response. That is what you're feeling, your immune system being on drive.
Mm-hmm.
And thanks for clarifying that. I know, Rob, are we close to our break time, or do we have?
Yeah, we have time for another question. Yeah, another question for sure.
Dr. Washington, just following up to your expertise in pediatrics, there are parents who are concerned, and adults and family members of those that have been vaccine injured in the past by other vaccines. So they may be a little skittish about any vaccine. And there's a very vibrant anti-vaxxer community as well throughout the world. How would you respond and show that there are differences perhaps in why those who may be concerned legitimately in the past, why it's safe for them to take this vaccine?
So really my recommendations are for everyone to receive this vaccine once you are eligible to receive vaccines. Now, we know that not everyone chooses to receive vaccines. I don't think that there will ever be a point where a vaccine will be forced upon someone, particularly not children. And so, again, that is a decision that they will have to come to on their own. But I think that the evidence shows, the data shows that the vaccines are safe. We do have some new information that was just released today from Prayze regarding vaccine safety in children between age 12 and 17. And so that is really going to be coming out soon. I believe that they are going to request authorization to administer vaccines to those children coming up in the coming months, with the idea being that they should be able to return to school hopefully in the fall. So that is all good news. And then there are also ongoing studies for children as young as 6 months up to 12 years of age to see about getting those approved as well.
Any other panelists want to weigh in on that?
Excellent.
All right. So right now we're just going to give everyone a chance to break in, and I would just encourage those who are viewing. I just got an email from online that it's at Prayze Party on Facebook or YouTube to chime in, and please, text in your questions through the chat. And we see a couple of questions that we're going to address as soon as we come back. We're just going to take a 1 minute, so don't go anywhere. 1 minute commercial to talk about the next Prayze Party, and also there's a book that has just come out by an author, Ms. Elena Grant, that has to do with the vaccine just for children. So let's just hear those commercial breaks.
We want to invite you to the Prayze-iversary.
The what?
The Prayze-iversary. It's the first anniversary of the Prayze Party. You don't want to miss it. It's Friday, April 16th at 9 p.m.
Larnell, I'm so excited there's going to be so many people in this virtual studio on that night. We're bringing back some of our favorites. We have Reverend Kevin Miller from New York. He's going to be our praise preach for that evening. And the musical stylings of Mel Holder. He's our instrumentalist, and that saxophone, ooh, he makes it sing. Talking about singing, we have Miss Lenasia Tyson, and then the acapella sounds of Seventh Element from down in Florida. But you know what else? We have our guest DJ, DJ Matt Cummins is coming to the stage, and you don't know what else is going to be on there. It's going to be a show like none other. But no show is complete without you, so you got to be there.
We got to have you. You've been with us all year long. You got to come to this Prayze-iversary.
You know what? Make that reservation for Prayze.
At the Prayze-iversary. Ah!
It isn't just hard on parents or teens. Little kids are struggling too. We can't go anywhere. And while children
this pandemic has rocked the world. And some of our most vulnerable, our children, have been left to try to understand this new way of life on their own. A New First Day is a short story that gives our children the tools to navigate through this pandemic without feeling afraid or alone. So order your copy today and help your child have a new first day.
And A New First Day can be found at Target stores and on Amazon. A New First Day by Elena Grant. And I'm just going to give a shout out. That's my niece. What? So I'm a proud uncle standing there. So I'm just thrilled about that. We have some awesome questions from the chat. And so I thank you. Continue to ask those questions. I'm going to go ahead and kickstart, and then I'm going to throw it off to you there, Tiffany, with respect to the vaccine. It says, great conversation. How long does the vaccine last? 3 months, 6 months, or a year? What's the deal with that?
Well,
Not everyone answer at the same time. I just don't want to stop off there.
We're not sure yet. We are clearly monitoring it, and we are hopeful that it will last a year. We do see that it is somewhat helpful and significantly helpful, even in the new variants that are springing up. But some of the things that we have to do is continue to work to see. This is something that truly we have released to protect ourselves, but it doesn't mean we know everything that we need to know about how this virus is going to act in the future and how we may have to respond to it. So that's one of the reasons that we are strongly recommending that patients who have had COVID should still get the vaccine. And depending on how severely they had the disorder, patients who have come into my ICU, for example, have taken a long period of time to recover. We usually wait about 3 months before we vaccinate them. But people who have tested positive with mild symptoms seem to get better fairly quickly. We've recommended more immediate vaccination because it's not clear that they had it severely enough to mount a significant amount of response where they would be resistant to it in the future. We have seen a very small amount of patients who have had COVID previously develop it again. And so we do have pretty clear information that says just because you have gotten the infection, it does not mean you can't get it again, because a huge part of it is how aggressively your body had to respond to get rid of it. And for many folks who did not seem to be very symptomatic, we're not sure that they were able to mount an aggressive enough response to be protective for themselves in the future.
I would just add an anecdote to that. So I have patients who I take care of. I'm a psychiatrist, but as I do my work, I have my patients who are dealing with the world, right? And so I've had actually a couple of patients who had severe COVID and got it again. And they were deathly afraid. They thought, I had one patient, she thought that they were going to find her, dead in her home. No one was going to even know she was gone, right? So it's real. So there's people attached to those numbers, but people can get it again. And so that would have been the only thing that I would have added, is the fact that we definitely know, while we don't know yet how long the response is going to mount, it's definitely longer than if you ended up having COVID. So that's really important, right?
I'll chime in on that as well. From the preliminary information that we have available, it looks like natural immunity. So when you have COVID infection, the assumption is that natural immunity lasts only 3 months. So when we look at, we're here now in April 2021. So individuals who had COVID-19 last spring or last summer, they certainly are susceptible at this time. And that's really why we've been recommending the vaccinations. And so what we do know also is that the immune response that your body creates to the vaccine is significantly higher than the immune response that your body creates to the natural COVID infection. Again, that is another reason why we are highly recommending the vaccination to everyone who's eligible to receive it.
And can each of you also speak to just laying out the case of the cost benefit analysis? Because some people in our community, they're very methodical and they want to weigh the pros and the cons. So could you just lay out, generally speaking, what's on both sides of the ledger that people should really be looking at in deciding whether they should actually take the vaccine?
I think it gets down to some very simple math. What is the risk of the vaccine harming you or hurting you to any significant extent versus the risk of getting COVID-19 and having a prolonged, very difficult illness? And in many patients, they pass away. In those that don't pass away, who are in the ICU for months, their recovery because of their deconditioning and weakness can take months. The risk of significant illness from contracting the virus in the real world is markedly and profoundly higher than any significant risk from the vaccine. And that has to be a primary concern. The second concern is when you get the vaccine, it is one of the most, it's a situation where you not only benefit yourself, you begin to benefit others in the society. The more people that get the vaccine, the more difficult it is for the virus to pass from person to person and place to place. So you are doing an incredibly altruistic and caring thing to work to protect the people around you as well as you are protecting yourself. It gives us, everyone throughout this enormous pandemic has been looking for ways, how can I help? How can I serve? How can I take care of others? The simplest way is to get vaccinated, because you not only protect yourself, you protect loved ones, and you begin to protect people that you don't even know. That may be one of the most giving things that we can possibly do.
Amen to that. Any other panelists want to weigh in?
I definitely agree with everything that Dr. Gay said. And then when you talk about cost, so I have a business degree as well, so I'm going to put my business hat on and say that when we talk about the cost analysis, so if you are employed and you contract COVID, then you have to be off work for a minimum of 10 to 14 days. That is lost income for you and for your family. If you have severe COVID disease and you are required to be in the hospital for months, or if you cannot continue doing your regular work, then you are without wages for whatever that period of time is. That means I've seen people who have contracted COVID and who have lost all of their savings. They've lost their homes. There are already people, companies have been downsizing. A lot of people have been furloughed from their jobs. COVID itself has a cost. In my opinion, getting the vaccination is how we get back to some sense of normalcy. And so that is going to help us get our economy back where it needs to be. That's going to help us get more people back to work. People have to feel confident to be able to go out, to be able to travel, to be able to go to restaurants and dine in. And that lends to money in our community. So that's what I think about when I think about cost outside of the medical aspect of COVID.
And Dr. Arma, I know that you are also, a psychiatrist. Could you, in addition to the answer you were going to give, also speak to, the psychological cost and or benefits as well?
Yeah, definitely. So I agree 100%. I definitely think about that all of what you all said and the financial costs, and then also the fact that there are also some possible implications down the road. So will there be insurance companies down the road who will say, oh, well, you got COVID, and so we're going to have you have a higher premium. You're going to have to pay more so that you can make sure your life is insured. Things like that. I think that the implications are so far reaching. But then, coming from the mental health perspective, I'll be honest, I've seen people really be traumatized by the experience, both of getting COVID themselves and then also having their family members get COVID. A lot of guilt for the one who brings it into the home, and maybe there's an elderly parent or grandparent who passes away. It has really rocked people's lives so significantly. And then the other piece is, as we don't get vaccinated and we don't get back to some semblance of normalcy, we have a lot of people who are shut in. They're so afraid to go outside. They're afraid to get the vaccine, but they're also afraid to go outside because they're afraid of getting COVID, right? So the isolation, the anxiety, and unfortunately, the trauma that has been brought on by not having us all vaccinated and sort of protected from COVID has been tremendous. And we're going to see the impact become greater and greater. We've seen skyrocketing rates of depression and anxiety during this time. And then, there's the acute, right? There's the acute cost of COVID-19. But then there's also the long-term effects, right? So we don't even yet know fully, but yet we have some information about the impact that one can have long down the line, right? So there's some evidence, and we're looking at things like, mood changes, and I talked about post-traumatic stress disorder, but then there's other things like just thinking and memory. People talk about feeling like they're in such a fog. I'm someone who treats people for having difficulty with remembering things or thinking clearly, being able to concentrate. The fatigue that people talk about. Some people, have these symptoms that we call, it's been referred to as long haulers, right? So there's both the immediate and okay, well, we got through that, but it's that long term that's also a piece, both physically and emotionally.
So as we're continuing to debunk myths, there are a few questions in the chat that I'll pose to any panelists to weigh in on. One, is the Johnson & Johnson vaccine less effective than Pfizer and Moderna? Maybe that question is rooted in knowing that Johnson & Johnson is just a one shot. And the second question is addressing the death reports from the CDC website of about 2,500 deaths, according to this commenter, of individuals who have passed away from side effects of the vaccine. And the questioner is wondering, are vaccine companies liable for side effects, injury, or death? So if anyone wants to address either of those two questions.
I guess I can start with the first one. The Johnson & Johnson vaccine is not thought to be significantly less effective. It takes a little bit longer period of time to reach the same level of effectiveness. Both the other vaccines, the Moderna and the Pfizer, are thought to be close to 90% effective within about a week, 10 days of the second dose. Within a week or so of the Johnson & Johnson, it's not that high. It's about 70%. But when you get out to about 28 days, it reaches 85%, maybe a little bit more. And so to me, that's relatively equivalent. There is clearly an advantage for folks that don't like to take shots to get the single as opposed to the two shots. But their efficacy seems to be about the same about a month after.
And Dr. Washington, you were going to weigh in on the second question.
Yes, I will weigh in on the second question. So the CDC website does report that through the post-vaccine monitoring, there were reports of 2,500 deaths, about 2,500 patients who died after they received the COVID vaccine. They do specific monitoring of those cases. Those patients underwent autopsy, and none of those were substantiated. And so when we talk about the number of doses of vaccines given, it's about 145 million doses of vaccines that have been given. And then when we talk about the number of deaths, that were reported after patients received the COVID vaccine, that's about 2,500. That's like 0.0017%. So like significantly less than 1% of that population, and none of those deaths have been substantiated to be caused by the COVID vaccine. And so I think that's important to highlight. That is also listed clearly on the CDC website.
So the one thing I would just add to that is that, sometimes people will really understand when they hear about a particular case. And so you hear about things in the news. People hear about, oh, this person, and they got the vaccine, and then this happened to them. But one has to look a little deeper. So it very well may be that a particular person dies from something that is completely unrelated to the vaccine, but there's also the much higher likelihood that that same person, if they had gotten COVID, would have died from those same causes, right? So, for instance, when we're talking about autoimmune illnesses, that's just another thing that people just have to dig a little deeper and speak to someone who may have the knowledge about that case rather than just taking it hook, line, and sinker.
Can you folks address this issue of the race that exists right now? And that is, what happens if our country is not getting vaccinated with respect to all these variants that are popping up? So I'm a 60 fans nut. And I remember, I think it was 2 or 3 episodes ago, there was a doctor from Columbia University that said there's a New York variant. There's an African variant. There's a UK variant. There's a New York variant. And he says, I don't even know if I'm protected from this New York variant. Can you folks address this?
It does look like the vaccines are protective for the other variants at this point. The big issue is why the variants occur. As this virus goes from person to person, the possibility and its likelihood of mutating is higher. Once that mutation hits and someone gets infected with it, other people can be infected with it. So the safest thing that we can possibly do is to vaccinate everyone to protect them. People have asked questions about, well, we've got vaccinations now. Why are the rates going up? Because regretfully in our society, before we even became close to vaccinating the number of people that we have needed to vaccinate, people started relaxing what they could do. They said, there's a vaccine now. I don't have to wear masks. I don't have to worry about eating and grouping with large people. Not enough people have been vaccinated for our society to be protected. So, right now, to reach the point where we feel comfortable with what people have said, the type of immunity we need for our society, herd immunity, reaches about 75, 80%. We're only about 16 to 18% of our total population being vaccinated right now. And we see the numbers of those being vaccinated increasing rapidly, but there's still a long way to go. And so we're seeing a rise in cases as people have assumed, well, we now have a vaccine. We can go back to acting normally. We still have to wear masks. We still have to be considerate of protecting the people around us and our loved ones to make sure that this virus does not continue to infect other people. Those are the issues and concerns that we see. And that's our biggest concern in this society right now, that people will begin to relax things just because they think that there's a simple solution. And our society taking care of this and treating this is not a simple solution. It takes individuals of great strength to do what they need to do every single day to protect themselves and protect those people around them.
We have a 1 minute before we wrap up. So if you have any final comments or thoughts, and also I'd like somebody to address where can they find more information, because we can't answer all the questions tonight, but it'd be good to know and guide them as to where they can go to get some credible, reliable, trustworthy answers.
I will chime in there and say, a lot of information is available on the CDC website. I will also say that your local health departments, your state Department of Health, and your county health departments should each have websites that have information about your local COVID rates, what those rates are in your area, and what you should be doing to protect yourself and to protect your family.
So I think we only have a few minutes left, but I just want to ask if anyone wanted to, 1 minute left, just a lightning round, maybe 20 seconds each, of what should leaders in the community do to help others get the vaccine? What do you recommend?
I would say be a good example. Most people have been encouraged to get vaccinated because someone they knew got vaccinated and did well. I know that I have been vocal about my journey with receiving the vaccine. And I think a lot of people have come to me and said that, hey, I got the vaccine because I saw you did fine with it.
Yeah, I agree. Modeling is key. And another piece is, I just say, don't be discouraged, because what we have been doing has been working. Right now, the majority of Black Americans, which is still not full, like 61% last that they looked, were now saying they were planning to get the COVID-19 vaccine, compared to 42% back in November, right? So we're doing the right thing. The modeling is key, and asking the questions. What's holding you back now? Right? So, really being thoughtful about that, and not making people feel like they are less than because they don't want to go and get the vaccine. That is not going to help anyone, right? As a psychiatrist, the way to motivate people for change is to first find out where they stand on that stage of change. And if they're at the part where they just need education, they don't know, then you start to educate them. You let them know where to go. And then beyond that, you can, really tell the personal stories, because that really helps people to understand where you come from in your journey. So not to say just, I got my vaccine, to talk about, well, was there a time when you didn't really want to get it? And what helped you to move that needle forward?
And last, our community leaders have to help us work to improve access for our community. We have to make it easier to get vaccines. We have to make it more available for our elderly and our students and all of these people around us to get one quickly and effectively. If we can do that, we may be able to start to get greater control in this pandemic.
Well, Dr. Gay, you have left us with a call to action, and Dr. Arma and Dr. Washington as well. Thank you for being models and role models, and for really showing the world also the relevance of African Americans being at the table in the medical profession as well. So keep leading, and we're very proud of you as well. Rob, thank you for hosting this conversation. Very excited to.
We're excited. We're excited that we have just this star-studded panel of physicians that are able to drop the knowledge on a community that's just learning and yearning for real knowledge, real facts from people that they can trust. So thank you so much for doing this. And I know that there are many questions here that haven't been answered. And I just want to encourage folks to ask more questions also at prayzeparty.org. And we are going to get you some answers. I'm going to come to the same people that are here and others as well to be able to provide some responses through social media, because that's the other way that we'll continue to communicate. So thank you all, Dr. Arma, Dr. Washington, Dr. Gay, for giving of your time and your God-blessed talent to be here tonight with us. And I just wanted to remind everybody that Conversations is going to be every first Friday of the month. Our next Conversations is coming up. We have some amazing stories. We have two young women from the U.S. volleyball team prepared for the Tokyo 2021 Paralympic Games. Their stories are unbelievable. Will bring you to your knees, will bring you to tears, no doubt. You don't want to miss that, because that's a conversation about resiliency. I just can't even tell you how it will be a uplift. If they could do it, if they can come from the valley of close to death to revive and to become Olympians, that's a story to tell. So we're excited about having them on Friday, May 7th, as we look towards the Olympic Games this summer in Tokyo. And folks, that's it for Conversations this week. We hope to see you on the Prayze-iversary, April 16th, and back here on May 7th for Conversations. Goodbye and God bless.